let's get going. Welcome everyone to this sprint demo for sprint 2020.13, which we just have finalized. We'll have a brief summary of what we did in this sprint, and then also some demos and maybe discussions in the end. So in this sprint, we have extended the C++ language standard support. So there is, as you know, in the both user interface and model compiler, we have a preference for specifying which C++ language standard to use. Previously, we just had two options there, but now we have added C++ 14, 17, and 20 language standards. And the reason we have done it is that we have implemented some features that where it's beneficial to be able to check for the model compiler which language standard the user wants to use. So one example is the support for marking elements as deprecated. So for example, you can mark an operation as deprecated or a class as deprecated, and also type a message which the compiler will print if someone uses that deprecated element. And this is a feature that requires C++ 14. So if you are using an older version, then the model compiler can detect that and print it. And in general, we thought it was a good idea to be specific about what standard you want to use, since we also have more features in the pipeline that are applicable for later C++ versions. In last sprint demo, we demoed a new feature which is about automatically computing the abstract property for classes and capsules. And we have continued to improve this a bit in this sprint. So for example, the preference that you can set to control whether this should happen is now off by default, since we found out that most likely it's good to keep the old behavior for compatibility. And then when you have checked so that your models work with this preference turned on, then you can kind of start taking advantage of this automatic computation. But having it on by default is probably not what you like, at least not when migrating from an older version. And we also improved it to take some more cases into account. We have getters and setters, and there was also feedback we got from one user or one user group about destructors, which also now were correctly handled by this this feature. Then we made several improvements in the Inheritance Explorer. There were both usability improvements, but also some new features that you will see in the demo. We also improved the way the tool behaves when you have it open on your computer, but then you are switching, for example, a Git branch outside of the tool, so that many files are affected and updated. Previously, there were dialogues coming in this case, and that could be so many dialogues that you basically had to close them all down or even kill the product. So now we improved it so that there are no dialogues in this case, but still editors where the underlying file was updated will be closed as before. We're also shipping an update of RTist 11.2 that should be used with Eclipse 2021-06. This is still experimental, but we are getting closer to the final release, which will come in May. And now everything is included except for a few features. So for example, eGit integration is still not included. And there are also some parts of the documentation, the generated API documentation is still missing. But we are adding them. We will add them in the next sprint. And just a recap of why this time it's a bit, no, I shouldn't say complicated, but it's a big work for us to upgrade to this Eclipse. The reason is that we have now switched from Java 8 to 11, and this is because the new Eclipse only supports Java 11. And that this in turn has triggered us to redesign our build system to use Maven instead of PDE build. Which means that we have to kind of redesign the build system from scratch, and now we're adding back component by component into the build again. And there are some differences in installation procedure that I also highlighted in last sprint, so make sure to read installation instructions carefully before installing 11.2 for the first time. Then I'm happy also to announce that now we will include the first version of our textual state machine support. This feature was demoed a couple of sprints ago, more like an early preview to get some feedback. But now it's actually available in HCL RTist, so you can, when you're installing, mark a checkbox to get the support for textual state machines, and you can test it. It's still experimental because we know about some limitations and issues that we will eventually fix. But as you will see in the demo, it's, I think, quite interesting feature that we would like to get your feedback on. And yeah, of course, the model compiler now also supports textual state machines, and you can even mix the usage with normal state machines as you like, so have some graphical ones and only a few textual ones, for example. The current experimental features is the whole HCL RTist 11.2 plus the textual state machine feature. And the deliveries we will make is another version of 11.1 called 2022.13, which should be used with Eclipse 2020.06. And then the experimental release of 11.2, which should be run with 2021.06. And we didn't update any of the older versions, so they are still available as before. And here is just a summary of the key features that are unique for HCL RTist. As you can see, we have now added textual state machines as the 5th item in this list.